3 of 4 games go to overtime, the Olympic quarterfinals. Welcome to the big show live, the hockey news. Andrew McGinnis alongside Michael Agello. Michael, we wanted drama. A lot of favorites were getting the job done. We saw a lot of blowouts throughout the tournament, as fun as it has been, but we certainly got the drama today. How are you?
Doing well. I hope the infirmary in Milan is stocked up on nitroglycerin pills because, yeah, this was some pretty intense hockey, some great comebacks. But, one thing that I don't know if anybody has said or anybody's noticed, the 4 teams that had the bye won, all 4 of them. So that back-to-back, that winning your groups and getting that second place finish really ended up meaning something in terms of all 4 of these teams going to the semifinals.
It's a great point, and we talked about it yesterday. There were some complaints out there through social media that every team ended up making the playoffs. So what was the point of the group stage? Well, we certainly saw it with the back-to-back, and those teams look rested. They had a game plan. They are ready to go. As mentioned, off the top, 3 of the 4 quarterfinal matchups go to overtime, Michael, including the most recent one that we just finished watching. A low-scoring affair, 2-1 final. Team USA takes it. Quinn Hughes, the OT hero for Team USA over Sweden. Your thoughts on that game?
I'd like to be Quinn Hughes' agent in a year and a half when he goes to sign his new contract, because he probably will end up being the highest paid or second highest paid defenseman in the NHL. It was funny because he waved off the American bench and told them, "I'll stay out here. I'm good." And because he did that, his skating is unbelievable. His puck possession, his edge work is unbelievable. And that was a phenomenal goal. And, really the U.S. dominated the overtime after trying to hold on with their fingernails to a 1-0 lead. And then Zibanejad scores late in regulation. And I think a lot of people were like, oh boy, here we go. But yeah, Quinn Hughes really stepped up in a big moment. And I believe he has scored in every game that the Americans have played, which is saying a lot.
I know many people weren't happy about the 3-on-3 overtime in the qualification round or in the quarterfinals or whatever it might be. But whether it's 5-on-5 or whether it's 3-on-3, having the mobile defensemen that USA have throughout their roster, it's so lethal because you've got some defensemen that are more skilled than most forwards on some teams. When you look across the roster for the Blue Liners, the plays they can make, and I thought the gap control was a bit weak on that, but if you make a little bite on him, he can beat you and make a play. So just an unbelievable finish there by Quinn Hughes. We are, of course, very happy to have Ryan Kennedy on site in Milan with us. He just caught up with Team USA and got some great quotes for us, I hope. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
What a day it was. What a day it was. We wanted good games. We wanted drama. We certainly got it. The game just wrapped up, and we are here live, of course, the big show, the hockey news. What do you have for us? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I talked to Matt Boldy right after the game, and obviously we asked about Quinn Hughes, and he said, that's a guy that wants the puck on his stick. He wants to be a difference maker, and obviously we saw it in that overtime. I was a little surprised. That was the second time that the Swedes gave Hughes that much space, and obviously Markstrom made a save earlier on that shift, but he made no mistake on that winner. Also, just talking to Boldy about Connor Hellebuyck, he said the same thing. I think that's something that maybe, I don't know if people are talking about it or not, but it's Connor Hellebuyck was fantastic as well, holding them in that game, when they couldn't get another one past Markstrom. And again, Boldy was saying, that's a guy that wants to crease. He wants to be the guy making the stops and helping his team out. And I thought, those were 2 of Team USA's best players tonight.
Ryan, let me just ask, because the skepticism going into the Olympics for both the favorites was Jordan Binnington great, he played at the Four Nations, but he sucked during the regular season. And how could Team Canada depend on him? And Connor Hellebuck played really bad at the Four Nations, and maybe they should go to Jake Ottinger. And both of those narratives have been shot down pretty quickly.
For sure. And it's funny with Hellebuck, like he had the best stats at the Four Nations. Like he wasn't terrible. It's just Binnington was better in that last game. But yeah, you know, when you talk to their teammates and their coaches, they have complete faith in both of those guys. And I think what we saw with Binnington today is he's that guy where when you need that save, he makes that save. And, you know, Coach John Cooper, who has been backing Binnington the entire tournament. In fact, you know, after game one, he sort of half joked, you know, somebody asked him, when did you know Binnington would be your starter? He said, oh, about 358 days ago. So, you know, and he just continued that, right? You know, he talks about, you know, the goals tonight that the Czechs got. He was like, those weren't on Binnington. Like we needed to be better defensively. So that's something we're going to clean up. But you know, when it came to the overtime, when it came to shutting the door on a very talented Czech team at the high end, Binnington got the job done. So I think, you know, at least for now, we have our answer, which is with Binnington and Hellebuck, when they put on their national jerseys, it is a different story. These are not the second last placed St. Louis Blues, you know, or the struggling Winnipeg Jets. This is Team USA and Team Canada, and they're doing just fine. Obviously, it was close tonight, but they got the job done in the end.
When it comes to momentum, of course, when you're the team that gets scored on or you're the team that scores the goal to force overtime, obviously you can kind of build off that, or you can be feeling the opposite and kind of feel a little bit less positive going into overtime. Did you hear anything, the American players, how they were feeling going into that overtime, how they were able to stay sharp after giving up that late goal?
Yeah, I talked to Brady Tkachuk after the game, and you know he acknowledged, he's like, "Hey, it was a blow. You know, you got a minute and a half left, and all of a sudden it's a tie game." But you know they believe in each other uh, in that room and on that bench, and you know when you have all the difference makers they do, it just felt like, I don't know, like it felt like not enough guys on Sweden wanted to be the guy to shoot it tonight. And that's more so in regulation, I would say, where I thought they had a lot of chances that were passed up, or they just kind of like double clutched where it's like, just shoot it. You never know. Right. And I think it's no coincidence that Mika Zibanejad's goal was like a great greasy goal in front. So yeah, in terms of Team USA, you know, Boldy said, you know, they were fine, just stick to the plan. And it worked.
Andrew, watching the U.S. broadcast, I know Eddie Olchuk was commenting on the fact that Philip Forsberg had probably 5 or 6 opportunities to shoot, and almost in almost every instance he passed the puck. So what Ryan is saying, I mean, it was picked up by the broadcast crew. I don't know about on CBC, but I mean, yeah, there are certain players who are pass first players and certain players who are shoot first players. I think like somebody like Nylander is more of a shoot first guy. Forsberg passed up so many opportunities, a couple in the third period that would have been really good chances, and he tried to pass it into the net.
Yeah, and he's a shooter, right?
Yeah, it's bizarre. It really is.
I feel like that's what you see at these tournaments sometimes, where it's elite players. When you're surrounded by all kinds of other elite players, you might not have that selfishness. And sometimes you're there to be selfish, right, guys? Like you look across the roster, you know, I was saying even today about Team Canada, I thought that some of these guys needed to grab the game and go take over. And I know I'm making it sound very simple, but you're there for a reason. You're on the roster not to pass it to somebody else. So, Ryan, the game is over now, and we talked about it going in. Sweden, USA, one of those teams would not have a chance to compete for a medal. Overall, you know, Sweden, they work their way into this matchup against USA. Very, very tight game. We can't take that away from them. But are you still disappointed with how Sweden performed at the games?
It's tough because, I mean, with this matchup, it's like a team that could win the gold medal was going home in the quarterfinal. That was just the reality of it. And, you know, in hindsight, You think about, the seeding and how Slovakia kind of upset, expectations for a lot of teams, where it's like, if things had broken a little bit different in the group stage, Sweden would have been playing Team USA in the quarterfinal, but that's how it ended up. You got to play the team in front of you. And I guess, they had a chance to win, right? That's all you can really ask for. I'm I shouldn't say disappointed, but it's like I thought that they could have had more execution. I also wonder how much better they would have been with a big, young, talented center named Leo Carlson had he not been injured for this tournament.
Or if Victor Hedman hadn't been hurt in the pregame warmup because he was sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Or the fact that Jesper Bratt, who was the 13th forward, wasn't used until the third period. I mean, a lot of people had problems with the coaching of Hallam, I believe it was,
Yep.
in this tournament, and some of the lineup decisions that he made. I mean, in one of the broadcasts, I think it was Brian Boucher or Eddie Olchuk was saying, well, if Hedman got hurt in the pregame warmup, then why didn't you put Rasmus Anderson in as the seventh defenseman? And the speculation was maybe Anderson is hurt as well. So it's like if it's injuries, I mean, we won't know that until if he's already spoken, and maybe it's already been reported. But this was probably the third most talented team in this tournament next to Canada and the United States. A lot of people picked them as a dark horse, but if you look at their group, they didn't play as well as Finland. They didn't play as well as Slovakia. They were inconsistent throughout. And I mean, that's surprising because, they were so talented.
Yeah, there was something a bit off. And I don't know if it was Hallam, if it was just how the guys were playing. I would say, to me, the surprise was that Jacob Markstrom ended up being their best goalie that played. Right. Gustafsson gave up some early goals that put them in a hole in other games. But Markstrom playing on a back-to-back was fantastic. So, yeah, a bit of a peculiar team. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of punditry back in Sweden about what went wrong.
Well, we talked about injuries and lots to talk about when it comes to injuries, of course, throughout the tournament, and some key players. And, Ryan, we don't want to keep you too long. We know it's late where you are, but going to the Canada game, we talked about facing adversity, right? You have to battle adversity. Everything can't be easy. I mean, that's adversity for you. It can't get any more than that. As far as some quotes and anything you heard, talk to John Cooper, Nick Suzuki, Mitch Marner, overall update on Sidney Crosby. What do you have for us from that game?
Yeah, I mean, John Cooper was saying, like, look, I haven't even seen him yet. He's like, I don't even have my poker face on this time. From what I gather behind the scenes, there's a pretty big distance between the dressing room and the mix zone. And when everybody comes off the ice, they go right to the mix zone to talk to reporters. So Cooper didn't know at the time. He did say that Crosby came in during the first intermission, talked to the guys, gave a sort of a pep talk to them. A lot of the other players that spoke afterwards referenced that, which was obviously a great motivator for them. And, for now, we just have to see. But I would say the one message that came out of that was, let's make sure this isn't Sid's last game at the Olympics. Let's make sure he has the opportunity, if he is healthy, to come back and play for a medal. So, yeah, we'll see what the doctors say, but at least behind the scenes, during and just after the game, obviously the Canadians were hoping for the best.
Yeah, I mean, only looking at what I saw on the video, the replay that I saw 3 or 4 times, it did not look good. I do not hesitate. I will hesitate to say he's not going to play again in the tournament, because I would never underestimate Sidney Crosby's ability to return, even if it's in like a Willis Reed type of New York Knicks, walking off the out of the locker room with a broken leg and playing. He could be the 13th forward and play on a power play and be a threat. But it didn't look good. And the one thing that Canada has a distinct advantage with is they have a lot of centers. So, they can move a Suzuki in between Stone and Marner on that checking line, and they really wouldn't skip a beat, even though Crosby is one of the most experienced player next to Drew Doughty on that team. So, I mean, we'll talk about what happened in that game, but I'll just say I don't underestimate Sidney Crosby at all.
Yeah. No, and I like the power play idea. And maybe they move McKinnon up. It feels like they're still trying to find a fit for McKinnon in terms of wingers. So maybe it's Marner and Stone and McKinnon. Who knows? We shall see.
Well, I'll offer one criticism of John Cooper, and I think it in the end it turned out fine. But I understand the want to do it, but he really leaned too heavily on the super line in the final 5 or 6 minutes of regulation, trailing by a goal. He played them every other shift, and they were completely gassed. It was only, it was not happenstance that it was the line in between with Suzuki with the tip that scored the goal. Because honestly, if I think those three guys were out there again, I don't know if they would have been able to get to the front of the net to deflect the shot. So I think he went to that well one too many times, but it didn't hurt them in the end.
John Cooper quotes are the absolute best. He's so honest, so well spoken. I love that he references the team, and he always says our country, not our team. Our country needed a goal, and Nick Suzuki scored it. Not our team, our country. And Ryan, I did see one where he said, I'm not using my poker face right now. I seriously don't have an answer for you guys with Sidney Crosby. So great stuff there. Ryan Kennedy, he's on site for us in Milan. All kinds of great work. All his stories at thehockeynews.com. Thanks, Ryan. All right, let's dive into the Canada game. And Michael, I'll tell you what, you don't have to worry about any Canadian bias from me, because I'm not going to tell you it was a great game. I'm not going to tell you they played extremely well. And you already kind of segued us into it with the usage of that top line and what they needed from them towards the end. And I was going to counter what you said there just a smidge, but I wanted to say goodbye to Ryan here. My counterpoint to you would have just been, it's almost like Cooper felt like he had no choice, until Suzuki ties it up. And until Mitch Marner is the overtime hero and wins it, it didn't seem like anybody else was going to be the guy that stepped up and made a play. If it wasn't Mick, Mac, or Mac, it seemed like it wasn't going to be anybody else. But Canada, they do end up getting the job done in overtime. And as mentioned, 3 of 4 games today finish in overtime. It's hard to summarize it, but give us your best.
Well, I mean, first of all, if the game had changed, if Czechia would have held on, there's some sort of mental block that Canadian teams have when it comes to playing Czechia. I mean, we've seen it in the World Junior the last few years. I don't know if it's just stylistic, whatever. Dostal played a great game. I didn't think he was particularly strong on the Marner overtime goal, because it was a 1-on-3 dash, and it was a backhand shot that beat him, as going back to the back post. I mean, I don't think Canada played a bad game. I just think, as I've said throughout the tournament, this is the most talented team. But when you got down to the quarterfinals or the medal round, these teams, in spite of not having as much talent, they can play a team game where they just try to shut things off. And Czechia did that, taking a 2-1 lead in the first period, holding on with the long change 2-2 into the third, and Palat scores that goal. And the thing I'll give Canada credit for is they didn't sulk. They put the pedal to the metal and kept going. I mean, it was that or they were going back home. But again, Cooper, I think, relied too much on that line, that combo, and he put out Makar and Taves a lot. And I don't know if that's a commentary on the rest of their defense, because I don't think the rest of their defense is bad. I know that Taves and Makar, really know each other very well, and they play off each other very well. But I thought he was relying too much on those guys. And, but like I said, in the end, it didn't hurt them.
You mentioned the style of hockey that Czech was able to play. And if you look at that game throughout, you got to think to yourself, this is probably exactly what was drawn up when you look at how they would have liked to have played that game against Team Canada. Great question here from Wyatt. Did that game not feel like the exact type of game Sam Bennett fits into? Look, they kind of made it difficult. They were physical. They were nasty. They played along the line. They made it hard to have those grade A chances. Was this a game that you were shocked that Sam Bennett didn't get into? And Michael, I'm going to take it a step further here. They've made us very aware about injuries when it comes to Josh Morrissey, when it came to injuries last year at the Four Nations. Sam Bennett has to be dealing with something, right?
You would think, although you would hope that John Cooper wouldn't have that Florida Tampa type of prejudice against Sam Bennett, because he is a Panther. I mean, I'll just say this, if you ask the head coach of Czechia, he would say, yeah, this is a Sam Bennett type of game because the referees didn't call the penalties that should have been called. I mean, the head coach of Czechia basically came out and said the referees gave the game to Canada, which I don't believe, but I thought there were a couple, borderline calls. I mean, but you could say the other way when Brandon Hagel got sticked in the face by, I think it was Kempney, and they didn't call it. They called it a follow through. And I tweeted out, I said, the 1993 Toronto Maple Leafs are calling, meaning, that was something that should have been called maybe. And, back in 93, the Gretzky high stick on Gilmore should have been called, and both weren't. Now, with Crosby probably out. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb. I mean, I'm not a soothsayer here, but if you would say maybe you hold him out against Finland and you play him in the gold medal game, if he can, then Bennett would be probably somebody who has played center, who can play wing, plays a feisty game, and that would match up against the Finns who play that feisty game. That might be a good fit if he is healthy.
I will say Seth Jarvis, from where I'm sitting, played a really good game. And we know what Sam Bennett brings to the table and his resume. I don't even have to list it. But I thought Seth Jarvis was noticeable out there. I thought that the type of play that he plays with, Michael, he's almost like he sticks to the basics, but he's just very, very good at what the basics are. And those type of players are trustworthy out there. He's not going to turn the puck over. He's not going to make a bad mistake. He's going to just play like himself. So I thought he was good out there. But let's talk about the adversity that this team faced. And maybe then we can get into some of the coaches' comments there from both sides. But facing adversity. Look, at one point when it was 1-0, the other team answers, and you're thinking, okay, they're going to answer. But they didn't have to answer once or twice. They had to do it multiple times, right? So when you talk about adversity and this team coming into this game feeling pretty good about themselves, not having to hit that panic button, and would you agree, like when Canada's down 1-0 or when Canada's down by 1 goal, it feels like they're down 4. And I know this is a hockey show, but I'm going to relate this to Team USA basketball. Like in the previous Summer Olympics, when USA basketball went down even like 4 or 6 points, it felt like they were down by 15 because everybody is so shocked by it. And that's what it felt like. You could even see, and the Canadian broadcast that I'm watching, Michael, they pretty much said that they were a bit disappointed after the first period with the lack of poise by the Canadian players on the bench. They seemed rather frustrated. Your thoughts on the adversity and how they handled it?
I think the team handled the adversity well. I think the media who are watching this are not handling the adversity well because they seem to think that Canada is going to win every game 10-0. It's like, I mean, it's, again, when you get into these international tournaments, now you're not playing on Olympic ice, you're playing on NHL ice. You're not playing with European or international referees. You're playing with a mix of SHL and Liga and NHL and, the international referees. I mean, I'm sorry, as much of a gap in talent as there is between, Canada and the United States and, the other 10 teams in the tournament, it's not impossible for a team that's not as talented to win a game. I mean, 1980, the Miracle on Ice U.S. Olympic team was not as talented as the Soviets. They were the best team in the world. They were better than NHL teams. They beat NHL All-Stars the previous year. And this group of college kids beat the Soviet Union. So, there's no bigger underdog than that. And all I'm saying is, a team like Czechia, who had some NHL talent, who had players like Pasternak and Natchez, they played, and Dostal played a really good game. They were within a minute and 30 seconds of winning one of the biggest upsets in international hockey. But, I'm sorry, I just don't buy into this. Well, if they get down by a goal, it feels like 4, because I'm sorry, they're human. They're not machines. And, they, believe me, they can lose. They might lose. They could very well win gold. They're that talented, but they could lose. And I think the media analysis of Team Canada should come to grips with the possibility that they could lose.
It's a great point by you. Very, very well said. And, when it's like John Cooper said, we would rather be the ones being chased than doing the chasing. But with that all being said, we expect everything to be easy. The feeling you have, like when it was tied, it didn't even feel like it was tied to me. That's how much panic sets in as somebody watching. So, David Pasternak, he gets on the board. You talk about Palat with that play. So much to talk about, but Mitch Marner, he's the OT hero. Let's not bury the lead. He gets the job done, splits the D, and I feel like everybody on the ice thought he was going to pass to the right, pass to the left, and he said, hey, fine, I'll do this myself. You touched on it already, but take us through it, the overtime winner for Mitch Marner.
I think they were stunned. I really think, because we know the book on Mitch Marner. He has always been a pass-first player. It was 1-on-3. He was on his backhand. And yeah, I think he said, okay, well, they're sitting back here. I may as well take a shot, because I know there's 2 players behind me that if they go the other way, it's only a 3-on-2 and I can catch up. So I think they were all stunned. And I think Dostal played the angle badly. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Marner. It was, probably the highlight of his career. I know a sizable chunk of fans in Southern Ontario would say, sure, well, you do it now, but you didn't do it for the team that paid you $70 million over the last 9 years. And it's like, great. I'm sure Finland is probably sending him a blue and white jersey so he can choke when they play him, because he doesn't choke when he's wearing red and white.
Well, I'll tell you, Michael, he was born to wear the maple leaf on his chest. He was born to wear it, just maybe not in Toronto. When you look at a guy like Nick Suzuki, I got to bring it up. I'm a Montreal Canadian. Gives me a good excuse to do so. Mm-hmm. Look, there were people out there saying, hey, maybe he's the one that gets left out of the game in the quarterfinals. And I was trying to defend him by saying he was brought on the team for his D-zone coverage, not as much for his O-zone. He misses a wide open net. I don't know. I can't remember if it was off a post or not. He was a little bit rough on his back check on that third goal. And then he's, instead of going off for a change, dumps the puck in, recovers it, handles the puck, sends it out, gets the tip. It's crazy how the perception of how people see you or how you see yourself in a tournament can change in an instant.
It's a results-oriented business. If you do something, all of a sudden Mitch Marner is not a choke artist. Now he's the cock of the walk. And that's just the way it is. And Nick Suzuki, now I thought Nick Suzuki belonged on the Four Nations. I know that people, it's ironic. You see the players that were omitted from the Four Nations, Thomas Harley was a late ad. And he played well in the Four Nation. I think he's played well for Team Canada. Bo Horvat has played well. Suzuki has played well. If you look at the Americans, Tage Thompson has been dangerous. Quinn Hughes missed it because of injury. He's been really good. So I mean, the players that were added, and the rosters were 23 to 25 players, so you could add 2 more players. All those players seem to be making an impact and doing well for their respective countries.
Question coming in here. How many shifts did Marchand have? I think I saw him on the ice once or twice. I do believe he finished with 8 minutes, Michael. That's what I saw off memory. Marchand, I think 8 minutes was the number. So, and worth noting as well, Tom Wilson's minutes seem to drop as well. That correlates with what Michael was saying earlier in the show about that top super line of the Mick, Mac, and Mac working together. While the question was brought up, I'll go to you for your thoughts, I guess, more on the utilization for that team.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, Marchand sat out 2 games in a row, so he's probably, and remember, he was injured before with the Panthers coming in to the tournament. So, he may be playing with something. And I mean, the wear and tear, and again, this is the reason why NHL owners, I'm sure, are not signing off on the Olympics, because, Sidney Crosby, if he's hurt, I mean, that almost kills the Pittsburgh Penguins' playoff chances. Now, of course, nobody in Canada cares about that. They care about winning the gold medal, but the NHL owners care about their teams, and they care about who they pay. So, I think that's a factor. But in terms of Marchand, I mean, I think probably later in the game he didn't play because he's not as fast as he used to be. He's slower, and I think, depending on what the injury is, I think it was a lower body injury. He probably just can't keep up. And Wilson, he took a bad penalty. So, that might have been a situation where we cannot afford to have another power play and have Pasternak or Necas score on us. And we'll just play it safe and not play him as much.
The longer I do these shows, talking to people like yourself, Ryan Kennedy, Michael Trakos, the more I've learned about just the value of a leader. And that's what he really brings. Cale Makar, in an interview, he talked about what Drew Doughty brought on the bench. He kept the guys motivated. He kept the guys loose. And, we all know that Marshy can talk. He can yap. And he's a guy on the bench. We saw after the Suzuki goal, he was yapping, and we had the question talking about his ice time. At that point, he might not have seen the ice for a long time, but he was still making himself worth it. So those are the type of things that some people will tell you don't matter too much. And then when it comes to games like that, the leadership really does matter. And we talked yesterday on the show about it. You don't have to wear a letter to be a leader. And talk about ice time. I thought Drew Doughty, Michael, actually saw a decent number of minutes toward the end of the game.
Well, I mean, he's old man. He's old. He's old man Winter. He's the dependable. He's Methuselah. He's the dependable veteran guy. I mean, he's, what Shea Weber was in previous years, or Chris Pronger. You have that guy who just knows the shortcuts. He doesn't have to, he doesn't have to skate 5 strides to do what a veteran guy can do in 2 or 3. He knows where to go. He knows the angles. That's valuable. And, I think, with a day of rest in between the quarterfinal and the semifinal, that's enough time for a veteran guy to, get his rest and and they'll probably play him 20 plus minutes. Why? Because he knows what he's doing and he's been here before.
You mentioned earlier about the Czechia coach talking about the officiating in this contest. I got to read the massive quote that he had, and you just can't make this up. One of the things he said was that it felt like they were constantly playing 5 against 6. Well, breaking news for this coach, there was actually a play, and it ended up being the 3rd goal Czechia scored, in which there were 6 guys on the ice celebrating and going down the line for fist bumps. I don't get how the referees don't catch it, the broadcasters don't catch it, and if you really zoom out, there were actually 8 skaters on the ice. 2 of them were going off, but 6 of them, I've never seen it. Michael, have you ever seen that happen? What are your thoughts on that? You block a shot, you're going up the ice, and you got Suzuki looking one way, Doughty looking the other way. They're thinking, why are we not covering enough guys right now?
Yeah. I've never seen 8. That's a little ridiculous. But hey, Canada is so much better that they had to have an advantage. So 7, 8, that balances it. Come on. Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't see it until it was posted on social media after the game. I didn't catch it live. Yeah, it should have been caught. I mean, is it something that should have been caught by video review? But after it, probably not. That should have been caught by the 4 officials on the ice. Had Czechia won that game, you would never hear the end of it. This would be completely, not reviewable. So, this would be a scandal that, it would be like the U.S. Russia Soviet basketball in 72, where the referees kept calling fouls and kept allowing a long stretch pass, and then eventually the Soviets won. And it would be that a scandal on that level had that been a determinative goal.
A lot of people probably happy that that's not the way the game ended. Okay, Michael, let's talk about the goaltending here, because I don't think if Canada lost that would have been the blame for why they lost it. And Ryan already referenced that, talking with John Cooper. We've seen quotes. He wasn't the reason that they were down in the game. But Jordan Binnington seems to still have people questioning his abilities. Your thoughts on his performance tonight?
Those people need to shut up. They really do. I'm not saying that Jordan Binnington is going to win the gold medal single-handedly for Canada, but they really need to shut up, because if he's not a clutch goaltender, then who was it that stopped Natchez on that breakaway with what was it, a minute and 5 seconds, or it was right after the Suzuki goal. He is a big time goaltender. He comes up big. He came up big for an underdog St. Louis team in the playoffs against the President's Trophy winning Winnipeg Jets last year in the playoffs, forced overtime game 7 against an outmatched Blues team. He won a Stanley Cup with the Blues in 2019. He was fantastic in the overtime at the Four Nations. I'm sorry, Logan Thompson, Darcy Kemper, go in the press box. Jordan Binnington's your goaltender. I'm not saying he's going to win it for you, but he gives you your best chance. So, I just like Hellebuck. I didn't understand the criticism of him with the U.S. Okay, he didn't stand on his head, and he wasn't the Vezina Hart Trophy winner at Four Nations, but he was still, like Ryan said, he was still pretty decent, and he's been really, really good in this tournament.
Big time players make big time plays in big time moments. And you talked about it. It frustrates me so much. It just drives me crazy because, I'm an eye test guy. I watch a lot of games, as do you. And I've gotten a little bit into the analytics. I'll be honest with you, I have. But you can take those analytics and you can throw them in the garbage, because I don't care about the expected this and the goals saved above this for the St. Louis Blues. I don't care about what he's done again for the St. Louis Blues. And that just drives me crazy. And you know what? To all the people that are saying this about Jordan Binnington, it's okay in life to admit when you're wrong about something. You don't have to double down. You watched a shutout. You watched him barely give up any goals. You watched him make a huge save in the end of the third period in overtime. And that's what I think drives me the most crazy, is that you have people doubling down, patting themselves in the back, circling back. Anyway, obviously you can tell I'm a fan of the guy, and I think he's made some big moments, big saves. Let's move on to the semifinals. The stage is set here. We will see Canada, Finland, USA, Slovakia go head-to-head. Great question here before we dive into those matchups. Who is happier, the U.S. playing Slovakia or Canada playing Finland?
Well, I look at it this way. The U.S. played a better team than Slovakia in Sweden in terms of more talent. I think that matchup would be tougher than Slovakia. Can Slovakia win? Sure. Slavkovsky has played phenomenal. Dvorsky has played really well. They're getting really good goaltending. They could win. They could win it. They could win a game against the U.S. Now with Canada, they beat Czechia in the preliminary round. This was a much tougher, Martin H is joking yesterday saying, well, we let them win the first one. So we'd win the second. He was almost prophetic there. But Czechia was not expected. They had some flaws. They were not expected to beat Canada. They almost did. Finland has, I think, a dozen NHL players, including Mikko Rantanen, including Sebastian Aho. They have a good goaltender in UC Saros. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Finland could beat Canada. Now, I'm saying Finland is a better team than Czechia is, so it's a step up for Canada. It's a step down for the U.S., but does that mean that either one should be comfortable? No, not at all.
Well, Slovakia certainly handled Germany. They definitely got the job done, and they made it look quite easy, if I'm going to be honest with you. One difference, I think, between Slovakia and Germany, when you talk about depth, I've noticed it throughout the tournament. You just rattled off a few big names for Slovakia, of course, but they really play well as a team. Every line is on the same page. They've got a lot of guys that contribute that I didn't know their name before the game started. I'll be honest with you. And so they've got their studs, but I feel like they distribute the ice time very well. They rely upon all guys. Who do you think are the X factors when it comes to these two games? We'll start with the Canada-Finland game.
Well, let me just make one point. The reason that Germany lost to Slovakia is because back-to-back games, and you'd played Draisaitl 25 minutes and Peterka and Stützle and Seider, and they loaded the minutes on. So you're playing second of back-to-back. I mean, that was not a winning formula. You needed to play the depth of your lineup more, especially against a team like France, who shouldn't have been a challenge. For Canada, I mean, obviously the key is going to be up the middle, whether they can generate offense past that big line. Now, I would hope that Cooper will start the game by spreading things out a little bit and having McDavid on centering one line and having McKinnon centering another line, and maybe Suzuki filling in for Crosby if Crosby can't play, because Canada has superior depth. Finland is pretty decent up the middle. And like I said, they have a bunch of NHL players who, some from the Florida Panthers who have won Stanley Cups. And UC Saros is one of the better goaltenders in the league. So in terms of the key for Canada, I think it's up the middle. And for the key for Finland, I'll say it's Miro Heiskanen, because that's the one area with Finland that I don't think they'd have great depth in. That top pairing of Lindell and Heiskanen is really good, but after that, Ristolainen, Matt DiPaolo, they're not overly deep on the blue line, and that's a weakness that the Canadians can exploit.
I think for Team Canada, you have to get more out of the guys that aren't the big names, and you just talked about it. You need some more out of the Hagels, out of the Suzukis.
Sam Reinhart.
Where has Reinhart been? You read my mind. Yeah, where has he been? We're going to find out. But he has been creating, but maybe hasn't been given the opportunities either. And I know this sounds crazy to say this, and I'm from Nova Scotia. I'm the biggest Sidney Crosby fan ever, but it felt like there was some cohesion when he went out of the lineup. Some of the things that had to happen, some of the moves that had to get made, it almost seemed like there was some gelling that took place, which the irony is, the only line that was never changed before was the Sid, Stone, and Marner line. But you talked about it. You slot Suzuki here. You move Reinhart here. You move McKinnon up. There can be some changes made. Look, Arturi Lehkonen for Finland is a player I think has just been kind of underrated throughout his entire career. And he ends up having that phenomenal effort towards the end of the game and, of course, getting the job done for them. So I look forward to seeing what he can do, because he'll definitely be in a shutdown role as well. When it comes to the other matchup, you talked about Slavkovsky and a couple of the guys there for Slovakia, but what do you think's the key, and who are driving the bus? Who are the bus drivers for these teams?
Well, for the U.S., I mean, it's going to be their mobile defensemen. I mean, that pairing of Quinn Hughes and Charlie McAvoy it's out of hand. It's obscene. I mean, McAvoy. I mean, people don't remember. People don't want. All people remember about the Four Nations last year was McDavid scoring the overtime goal. People don't remember when the three fights in the Canada-U.S. game. People don't remember McAvoy laying out Connor McDavid in the game Canada versus U.S. McAvoy did that on 3 or 4 occasions in this game, where he laid out, I think it was Joel Eriksson-Ek, he laid out another Swedish forward. He does that with regularity. So you put a pairing of him being the physical player with Quinn Hughes being that offensive, and McAvoy's not a bad offensive player, but he lets Hughes cook, and that's what Hughes does. That pairing, along with a shutdown pairing of Jacob Slavin and Brock Faber, I mean, their advantage on the blue line is really starting to come to the forefront. If you're asking me for one key player, well, he was a key player tonight, and that was Dylan Larkin, because Dylan Larkin Eichel's great on the number 1 line, and Matthews has been really good on the number 2 line. But to get offense out of that 3rd or 4th line, Larkin scored the goal today. By the way, for Buffalo fans, Rasmus Dahlin left him untouched to deflect the puck. It was a bad defensive play by a really good defenseman. But I think they need Larkin, and he played today with Keller and Thompson at times, and that would seem to be a good mix. So they need Dylan Larkin to create. You would think that they don't need more depth offensively, but I think you need to take a little bit of the heat off of the Eichel line and off the Matthews line. And Jack Hughes and Larkin have really stepped it up offensively as in a bottom 6 role.
I'm not sure how in a quarterfinal game a player can just squeak by you and not make much noise, but Dylan Larkin did that next to Rasmus Dahlin and just had that excellent deflection, but he got the job done. I won't give players, but I'm going to say keys to the game. Shots, shots, shots. We talked about it earlier with Sweden being far too picky. I think they're going to have to get their shot count up. Fire pucks on Hellebuck from all angles you possibly can. Mm-hmm. Don't try and make it pretty. And as far as USA, you touched on it, and I'll elaborate on it. I think it'll be counterattack in numbers. When you have the mobile defenseman that you have, you can kind of go after them. If they turn the puck over, all of a sudden you can activate a D and you can go at them and you can have an odd man rush. I feel like they're going to really be able to take advantage of that. A reminder at home for folks watching, we will be live tomorrow after the end of the gold medal women's game featuring USA and Canada. Stay tuned for that. Going to be a great day of hockey once again tomorrow. So if you enjoyed today, get ready for tomorrow as we have a gold medal game taking place and history on the line. That's for sure. So cannot wait to watch that. Michael, we've been having so much fun together talking hockey every single day. Any closing thoughts from you?
Well, I'm almost hockeyed out after 4 games, but we've got a lot more to go over the next few days. So I'm anxiously looking forward to it.
It's been a blast. You're really, really fortunate when you're a little bit fatigued from watching a sport that we love. That's for sure. So thank you to everybody tuning in and watching us every single day here. The Big Show live at the games, the hockey news, alongside Michael Agello, Ryan Kennedy join me. I am Andrew McGinnis, and I'll see you next time.